This is a video about drafting a source critique. This week we have a draft of your essay, which we're calling a source critique, due, and it's due for review. So you also want to review at least one other student's draft. And next week we will be reviewing revisions and looking at some editing questions so that we can prepare these reviews of sources, critiques of sources for the end of the month. So I wanted to walk through some notes that I've been making to students. So I have a kind of script here. You can follow along and I'll post this as well. So here's some notes for drafting a source critique. What is a source critique? It is a critique of sources. A critique is an exploratory analysis where we look for the parts, the aspects, the relations, and the context. So we look at what's going on inside of whatever it is that we're trying to analyze, but we also look at how those aspects and parts relate, and we also look at what's around it, what's in the context around that object. A critique of sources is part of seeking to explain the positions on an issue, right? So an issue is just something that we argue and talk about. So maybe we're looking at social media, maybe we're looking at health, maybe we're looking at treatment for a virus. And we want to know the truth. We want to know things. A source is a source of knowledge. Maybe it's a scientific study. Maybe it's scholarly research. It's somebody with some expertise. A source, I want to say, is different from an outlet. A journalist, other forms of media, a politician at a podium. These are all not sources, but they're outlets of information. They may not have developed that information. They're just passing it on. As much as possible, we want to get to sources of knowledge and not just outlets of information. A source generates knowledge, in other words. It doesn't just spread information, which is what an outlet does. And our goal is knowledge. And knowledge is not just belief, and it's not just opinion. We want expert knowledge. We want something that's as close to what Engels calls absolute truth or absolute knowledge as we can get. We also know that any knowledge that we have is always relative to the social development of the ways and means of producing knowledge, right? And this is true both of new knowledge that we have, old knowledge, and new knowledge and old knowledge are going to float around next to belief and opinion. And so as much as possible, we want to try to separate belief and opinion from new and old knowledge, right? And depending on your subject, old knowledge may or may not be as valuable as new knowledge. But we want to try to find ways to separate it just from opinion and belief. And that's what we've been working on all semester. It's why we started by thinking about concepts with Nietzsche and Engels. So for the source critique, to try to break down the assignment further, you're trying to go to the source or sources of knowledge, and you want to assess two aspects of this knowledge and of these sources by attempting to answer two kinds of questions. So one kind of questions I'm calling trap questions or Goldman questions. These come out of some resources that we've had in front of us. Note the typo. We want to know who's the source, what's their background, what's their track record, what's their reputation among experts, not just the popular view, but among experts. What are some possible biases, special angles, points of view? In short, what are the bases of their expertise, and thus what is the basis of their authority on a given subject? And so you've got some good tools to help you with that. You have what Paolucci writes, Working with Goldman, right, which offers you those 5 points that many of you have been working with. You also have the trap test, right? So this is on the library page. I've linked to it on all of our classes, right? And one of the things that you can do with a source is simply work through the trap test. You're gathering these pieces of data to try to help you to understand and analyze the source and the argument that the source is making, right? So timeliness or currency, relevance, the author, accuracy, purpose, etc. Now, the trap test is not complete and not as deep as it could be, which is why we're also working with Toolman. So to come back out to my document, we also ask what I'll call Toolman questions about argument. What is the argument? What's the claim or conclusion? How conclusive is it? How does it deal with counter arguments? What are the warrants or motives? What backing is there, etc.? In short, what is the case and how strong is the case relative to other cases by experts and authorities. Right? Now bear in mind, if we were to really do this thoroughly, we would have to write a 50-page paper and we would have to take 8 weeks to do it. So we're going to do what we can in the time that we have. Right? So I wanted to think about that a little bit further, but I also wanted to point you to Toulmin. On the Purdue OWL page, there's yet another summary of Toulmin. You've been finding lots of good ones online that further explains the relationship between the claim an author makes, the grounds, the evidence and support for that claim, the warrant, which would help us associate these two, right? So if I make a claim, I have some grounds. Discovering the warrant is an important and interesting part of trying to understand, why does this evidence support this claim? Why does this reasoning support this claim? So this week we're reviewing drafts. So I wanted to remind you of what we're doing in a writing class. So a draft is not a finished essay. A draft is not just a set of notes or an outline. A draft is a full, messy attempt to make sense of a task in doing the task. So part of writing this draft is clarifying for yourself and others, what is a source critique? What are the sources I'm trying to critique? What does it mean to critique? It's worth taking some time to think that through for yourself. But a draft is an attempt. It's not a complete attempt or a completed attempt. That would be the finished product. It's as close to a completed attempt as you can make in the time that you have. So my challenge to you is to try to post a draft Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday. See what you can do in that time. If you have to go to Thursday, I understand, but you want to get a draft out there so that people can respond to it. I will not be able to respond to all drafts in the time that I have, and so what I will try to do is, in the drafts I do respond to, I do review, I will try to note comments that would be valuable to other people, because I find that the issues that one student has, other students will have. So even if I don't get to review your draft this week, or even if nobody gets to review your draft this week, look at the reviews of other drafts, and that's going to give you some ideas to think about for your own essay. All right. So a draft isn't just notes. It builds on notes to move toward an essay. So should you make notes? Absolutely. Use Toulmin, use the trap tester Goldman to make notes about the two articles, the two pieces that you're looking at. And one of the things you could think about is, do I have two sources here? Or do I have a source and an outlet? Right? If you're comparing a scientific study to something that showed up in the newspaper, a scientific study is a source. The newspaper is not a source. The newspaper will name sources. And you could certainly work with that as one of the pieces you wish to analyze. Is this a good article? But if you can get to sources, so much the better. So a draft isn't just notes. It builds on notes. Your Toulmin notes, your Goldman or Trapp notes. And remember the course proposition on the syllabus. Writing is thinking, not a formal skill. Thus, an essay is not a form. An essay is first a record of your thinking. Right? The first draft of an essay is your attempt to think through something, and you create, by writing, a draft. You don't draft in your head. You think in your head. Speak with your mouth. You hear with your ears. Drafting requires writing. It requires typing on a keyboard, writing with some pencil or pen or something on a piece of paper or something. So it requires that process of writing. Of course you want to take time to think, but we can't read your thoughts. We need to see the text that you produce. So an essay is not a form. An essay is first a record of thinking. Then it is revised. It's remade or developed. So that's a kind of second aspect of writing. It's moving from that thinking to how I'm going to present that thinking to someone else. Right? So revision is a presentation of the process and the fruit of this thinking. So there's a difference between what's called the mode of discovery, when I'm discovering something, maybe it's knowledge, maybe it's not, and then the mode of presentation, where I'm going to put that in front of an audience, in front of a reader, in front of the public. So drafting is about discovery. So that's why I say messy, right? And different people's messes are going to look different. Some people's messes will look neat to you. Some people's ideas of neat will look messy to other people. So drafting is about discovery, it's about thinking. Revision is about developing this discovery further and beginning to think about how am I going to present this to somebody else. That's the form. Editing is about the presentation of this process and the fruits of this process of discovery to the reader, to the audience, to the public, to the teacher who's going to put a grade on it, etc. The goal of drafting, which is what we're doing this week, is to set something up, to discover something that over the following week you can build on, you can shape, you can form, you can edit, so that by the end of the month, early into May, you'll have something you could present which will be your attempt at knowledge, not only about your particular subject and the issues, but about the two texts that you're comparing and contrasting. And that's the kind of analysis we're really doing. We're comparing and contrasting two sources so we can evaluate their authority, their knowledge, and what it is they're trying to say. So I look forward to seeing your drafts this coming week. I look forward to helping you to review other people's drafts, and I'll be checking in with you throughout the week. Be well.